Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. We're through 3 games of the Stanley Cup Final, and gee, what's happened, Russ? We'll talk about that in a minute, but we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
Well, I saw a quote just now. It was interesting. Adam Silver, the basketball NBA commissioner, said that, as a basketball fan, he's upset that Caitlyn Clark's not on the Olympic team, and as a commissioner, he understands it. That's a bad line to kind of straddle because, honestly, I'm okay with the decision. Like, it's first year in the league. She's not the best player in the league, and that happens to many players, especially in hockey and other sports for the Olympics. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. But by him saying that, now he's sort of returning it up, making it a bigger deal. And I think they should just leave it alone. Like, she understood it. Everybody understood it. Like, leave it be. But, like, anything involving Caitlyn Clark now just gets blown out of proportion.
Yeah, I mean, I saw, and I don't watch WNBA games. I barely watch basketball games. I'm watching the NBA Finals because the Celtics are playing. But I did see like the highlights on ESPN, which, by the way, they give more coverage to the WNBA than they do the Stanley Cup Final in terms of minutes. And they showed Clark's line of 7 points and 6 assists or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, she probably, I know that there's the history of Christian Laettner making the 92 Dream Team. Yeah, he won 2 national championships. And I mean, he didn't play a lot, but it was understandable. Apparently Shaquille O'Neal almost made that team too. It was understandable that Laettner made it. But he was a 12th man. I mean, if they included Caitlyn Clark as the 12th woman, would I had a problem with it? No, but clearly they would have been doing it for publicity purposes, not based on merit. So I just don't like the way this whole narrative is going, Jan, with the WNBA. Caitlyn Clark getting slammed by players. There's a lot of jealousy. There's a lot of BS. And, now it's taken on, sexual orientation things and racial things. And it's like, I mean, God, it's like, can we just play basketball and watch sports and not get into the politics and the bullshit?
Well, Laettner making the team in 92, they'd agreed to take a college player, right? That was part and parcel of kind of the equation, which is why he made it. So the game you're talking about was the recent game that Clark had. She's not on a particularly great team, right? She's learning the league. They've admitted that's going to be a learning curve for her coming into the league. She's quite well aware of it. I'm not going to be foolish enough to say that she hasn't been targeted by players because it's fairly evident, right? The Angel Reese stuff that went on and some of the other stuff, it's pretty clear she's been targeted. I mean, even before she joined the league, Diana Taurasi had comments against her, I think, to a certain extent. I think Breanna Stewart had some comments against her. Part of it is most certainly publicity related, and they probably should have nipped that in the bud initially when they named the team. But the ironic part is there was one of the players that are on this team that is questionable to make it based upon an injury, and she is one of the first or second alternate who may end up on this team anyway because of the fact of an injury. She is bringing eyeballs to the league. What they don't realize is she is making them money. She has helped with them get charter flights. That's not only her. Granted, it started last year, but she has most certainly pushed that agenda a little bit forward. She's good for the league. To put your head in the sand and say it's not potentially racially motivated is foolish because I think we all agree it is. From a sexual orientation perspective, I'm not quite sure I'm willing to go there because she has a boyfriend. We know what the WNBA supposedly is made up of. I used to watch Nancy Lieberman years ago. I watched Carol Blazejowski a little bit years ago. I watched Cheryl Swoops. I watched Cheryl Miller. I mean, the jokes Russ can attest to is Reggie Miller was the only person who couldn't beat his sister in basketball was the joke years ago when he played at UCLA. So, I mean, look, there's been a lot of great players. She is another long line. She's going to get better. She has to cut down turnovers. She has to learn to deal with the physical play associated with it. But look, she made the team. There are 12 better players. And the ironic part, the person who made the decision is Jen Rosati, who was an All-American at Stanford, who played on the Olympic team also. So it's not as if they had a person picking the team who doesn't know what they're talking about either.
Right. Peter, what my issue with is this has become a not only a political but a media football with Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee throwing insults, and I guess there was some sort of internal ESPN war between Peter Rosenberg and Stephen A. Smith. I mean, I don't know. I can't follow it's like follow the bouncing ball. All I know is She's a good player. She's bringing eyeballs to a sport that didn't have enough eyeballs. And now there's like all this controversy. And really, it's like just she's bringing the sport up to a higher level. Accept it.
Yeah, and just congrats to the German team who just went 1-up on Scotland. Anyhow, speaking of great sporting terms, look, what I think is happening a little bit in networks where they've gone into the cult of personality with their broadcasters and announcers and people and analysis is it's starting to look more like it's being produced by Andy Cohen than it is by sports people. And the feuds and stuff looks more like a Real Housewives episode in the way they sit down and argue and banter and accuse each other. They're just doing it passively from afar. But that draws ratings, unfortunately. And that's what they're, and make no bones about it. Producers are smart. They're under the gun and they are watching trends like hawks. And they are in those ears. Stephen A. Smith, Pat McAfee, yes, they're live wires. But they've got people guiding them 100% of the way. No one comes up and starts doing this solo and makes it all happen on their own. They've got people in there and they know the metrics. This isn't Nielsen ratings back in the 80s where you find out weeks later who was watching. They know right away all the streams, all the things. They know what peaks, they know what hits, and they're using it. And they incite this stuff. And that's what you get. As for Caitlyn Clark and everything, I don't really have an opinion on whether she should be on the team or not. I don't follow women's basketball that closely. But what I do know is the organizations and countries who have used the Olympics as training grounds and getting people to understand the experience are propelling themselves for better success down the road. And if you want to maintain dominance and be good, get her as an alternate and let her see that thing. She doesn't have to play. That's just smart business. And you know what? Maybe, just maybe, having her around as an alternate, as a 12th player, helps some of the competition around her who are maybe resentful understand she's a human too. And whether she didn't want this threat, she didn't want all this nonsense. She just wanted to be a great basketball player like everyone else. Like being a great ditch digger or being a great thing. She didn't ask for the attention.
No.
She just went out and did what she was trying to do, which would anyone do. Be good. And now she's getting creamed for it. That's wrong. And there's a lot of manufactured outrage over this, and we got to let it go.
Right. All right, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, June 14th, 2024.
I'm Pete Tessier,
and it's the
sorry.
Good, Pete.
I'm Pete Tessier in Balmy, Winnipeg.
I'm Jan Levine on the 30th anniversary of the Rangers winning the Cup in 1994.
I'm Russ Cohen. You can check out my final draft rankings on NHLDraftBuzz.com.
That wounded Peter. And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com.
And I'd like to say I'm Pete Tessier, still angry at Nathan Lafayette.
That's fair.
And I can still hear the ping 30 years later. Trust me. By the way, the ex-Ranger Nathan Lafayette also, because he was in the Ranger organization at one point too.
Right.
Yeah,
and who else was in the Rangers then? Doug Lidster, who didn't.
I was going to say Doug Lidster.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
Oh goodness. So let's talk about another Canadian hockey team in the Stanley Cup Final that's going to go down to defeat, and that's the Edmonton Oilers, who went down to defeat in Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final on Thursday, 4-3. A lot closer than the score sort of indicated. I mean, it was a fantastic second period by the Florida Panthers, jumping out to a 4-1 lead. And then, like most teams, they tried to sit back on the lead, even though they were, they weren't sitting back and just letting Edmonton come to them. They were aggressive. They were forechecking. Edmonton got a couple, fortunate goals, a nice deflection by McLeod to make it 4-3. I don't know, Russ, first, I don't know if I really felt any sort of thought that Edmonton was going to tie the game. They kept inching closer, and it was 4-3 and one deflection or one. I mean, the only thing was the remarkable save that Bobrovsky made on McDavid, the left pad save. That was their best chance, but in the end, the Panthers win and take a 3-0 lead.
Yeah, I mean, they were desperate. It was like, the Black Knight of Monty Python. They were down to just that. I mean, they got it close.
Just
That
a
may
flex.
be as that may be as close as it gets. I picked them in 5. People I know thought that was aggressive, but that's what I felt. The thing about Florida is, and Florida's not a shiny team, but they're a team, and they're a great team, and they know what to do, and they do it, and they do it well. It reminds me the other day, and I can't believe I have to back Larry Zonka on this, but there were a bunch of guys interviewing him because they were the Dolphins' perfect season. That team was finally listed in some sort of, great team power rankings in ESPN. But, Zonka was correctly pointing out, listen, not one of these players on this team were like the best in the league really at anything, but maybe he was, but he was being, he toned that down, and I give him credit for that. And I remember I watched that team, and that team was just a well-oiled machine. You just couldn't beat them. They just would wear you down. And this is exactly what another Florida team, the Panthers, do. They wear you down, and they're wearing Edmonton down quicker than the Rangers because the Rangers have better defense and better goaltending. So it's not really a surprise.
I mean, first of all, that 70 team also forgets that Greasy missed half the season, and Earl Morrow, their backup quarterback, played most of the season. So look, if you look at it right now, and I may be going on a limb here, Edmonton probably should be up 2-1 in this series. Bobrovsky's been absolutely phenomenal. He stole game 1. He basically had a goal saves above average, about 5 goals, which is the best score. And in the first and third periods last night, he was ridiculous. Now, look, every mistake Edmonton made in the second period last night, and Darnell Nurse has just been flat out wolf bad this series, but every mistake they made ended up in the back of the net. But you look at the way Bobrovsky played the first and the third period last night, he kept them in it in the first period when Edmonton was coming early in front of the home crowd. And as they got closer and closer, as Russ said, that pad save on McDavid, along with a handful of other saves he made, were top shelf saves last night. So he has been, to a certain extent, standing on his head, augmented by, granted, they got a very good lineup around him, especially, look, a lot of us knew how good Alexander Barkov is, and we said before the series, America's finally going to take a look and see just how good he is and how dominant he can be, and they're finally seeing it. But they are playing as a team. Bobrovsky's been standing on his head. I mean, I love all the questions, David. Why aren't you scoring? Have you seen the guy in net who's basically stopping us? Like, why don't you ask a stupider question? I mean, he has had at least half a dozen grade A chances that Bobrovsky has turned aside, which is why neither he nor Draisaitl have lit the lamp yet.
Peter, Edmonton, I believe, is 0 for 9 on the power play. The power play was probably one of the things that people who thought that Edmonton could win this series, they would look at, the Edmonton power play, which I think was over 30% going into the Stanley Cup Final, would be a determining factor. Florida, I think, has killed like 36 of 30 of the last 38 penalties. I think the Rangers were the only ones who scored power play goals. I would grant Jan's point is right. I mean, right now, Bobrovsky is probably the leading candidate for the Conn Smythe. But I put up in our blog and for the webcast, are the Oilers proof that the playoff format is a failure? And I'll expound on that, but give me your thoughts on the series so far.
No, I don't. The playoff format being a failure, I think, is not because of where the Oilers are. It's because we really haven't had the most entertaining series along the way that we could have had. And I think that's been noticeable for a little bit over a few years. To your point about the Oilers power play, I saw a highlight clip today on Twitter that showed the way Florida is countering the power play, and particularly showed a highlight of McDavid trying to find room. And what he's very good at doing, right, is when McDavid comes in the zone, is a quick lateral turn and then going across the ice and turning again, and then out turning people going wide. And one of the things that Edmonton got away with for 3 rounds was they threw nastier picks than G League did in terms of stuff. They got away with it for so much. And one thing Florida has done, and this is where I mentioned on Twitter the other night that Knobloch is getting outcoached, is that they have found a way to get around those picks. They aren't there. And McDavid's not finding the space. One, maybe Maurice was smart and talked to the officials and said, watch this because it's highly illegal. And they've told them, don't do it because we're going to call you. But when you realize a team has been getting away with stuff that they can't getting away with stuff for 3 series, that doesn't exist, that power doesn't exist anymore. McDavid's defendable. And Florida's doing a darn good job of it, not when Edmonton's not getting away with cheating. And I think that's a really important part of this, because there's no way that power play should be that neutralized. But man, when you see the way the Florida players are rotating and covering him, it's very impressive.
Well, the other thing that was clear, every time McDavid was out on the ice, they put Forsling out on the ice. He played 28 minutes. And if you want to say, well, who's their best defenseman? Well, you can make a case for Ekblad, because Ekblad, he was out there 24 minutes and he's really solid defensively, and he's become more of a two-way defenseman in the latter years of his career. You could say Montour because of his offensive ability, but clearly Paul Maurice thinks it's Forsling because Forsling can skate and stay and keep pace with guys like McDavid. And Jan, you made the point about Forsling with the four. I remember him back in the day with Chicago and with Carolina, and I think he was with Vancouver for a little bit. He was somebody who got pushed around. He was somebody who got walked around. Not anymore, and he got physical, and he's cross-checking McDavid and Draisaitl in the last 30 seconds of the third period. That's not the Gustav Forsling I know back in the day.
No, it was like half. I'm watching it going cross-check, pause, another cross-check. It's like at least half a dozen times he's pounding these guys in the back, which again, officials are probably not going to call it, but after a while it just got to the point where I just started counting how many times he did it, because it was so blatantly obvious down the stretch with about 30 seconds to go. He wasn't even looking at the puck. He was just basically hitting Draisaitl and McDavid in the back, or whoever was near him in the back with his stick. So look, Edmonton came close down the stretch. I think they have a little bit of pride. I think they'll win game 4, whether or not that'll mean anything, but I don't think they're going to go out and get swept. But look, we all said before the playoffs, we thought Florida overall was a better team, a collection of individuals as opposed to a 1 or 2 person team. And right now, Nugent Hopkins has been invisible, Kane has been invisible, Nurse has been brutal, Skinner has been exposed to a certain extent, although I'm not going to put it all on the goaltender. But a lot of the turnovers are creating 2-on-1 opportunities, which he's getting beaten on. But Florida as a whole is a better team. They learned last year what they needed to do against Vegas when they made the run from the 8th seed. And this year they took the lessons, because look, even the game they lost last year, we said the 9-5 loss they had in the last game, Aiden Hill stood on his head. There's at least half a dozen saves in that game that he made that it could have been a 9-9 game down the stretch watching that contest.
The one thing though, and look, we all know Bob was going to bring his A game. I don't think anybody was thinking otherwise. But when Skinner misplayed that puck, we all knew that was the game. Like, that was it. That was the point where you were like, okay,
the air was,
and then all of a sudden the goals started coming, and
the air was let out of the balloon at that point.
Yeah. So now, I think you get it back for a game, but does it even matter? It doesn't. Again, I've always been told by Ranger fans that, well, that loss to the Kings, that 5 games, it was closer than you think, and it doesn't matter because it was 5 games. It wasn't 7 games. So even if Edmonton gets it to 5, this isn't really close. It doesn't really matter. They just aren't up to the task. Like, that's it.
Here's my point, and Florida is going to get full credit, obviously, for if and when they win this series. And now that they're up 3-0, obviously I think they're going to win. Only the 42 Maple Leafs came back from 3-0. But you have to say, though, and but this is the reason I put up is the playoff. Is the Oilers being in the final proof of the playoff format being a failure? Going back, and Gary Bettman, his complete intransigence about, the playoff format is fantastic, guys. It's the best hockey. Bullcrap. You had a bad final last year between Florida and Vegas because Florida had to go through the gauntlet that they did to get to the final. And now this year, Edmonton, and this is why Florida deserves all the credit. Florida went through Tampa, 2-time Stanley Cup champion recently. Still, maybe not the team that they were, but still pretty damn good. Boston, who had beaten Toronto and a solid defensive team, good goaltending, a couple good scorers, and the New York Rangers, who I thought were the best team in the league. So they went through those 3 teams to get to Edmonton. And Edmonton is the easiest of the 4 foes. And why? Edmonton, now they went through LA, a wounded Vancouver team, and Dallas, who had to go through Vegas and Colorado. Had it been a conference format, okay? Conference format, it would have been Dallas, Vegas, same as this year. Vancouver won the Pacific. They would have been the 2 seed against LA, so that would have been different. Winnipeg, Nashville, and Colorado, Edmonton. The Oilers would not have beaten the Avalanche. They would have been a first-round elimination. I said,
I don't know that for sure.
No, I don't know it for sure. That's my own personal belief. I said this online, and I got crap for it, but I don't care. The Edmonton Oilers, if they are in the Atlantic Division, would be the Toronto Maple Leafs. They'd lose every single first round. Why? Because they're just like the Leafs. They're an incomplete team with a half a defense and average goaltending. And you can't.
I know this for sure. On that 42 Leafs team, Mike hated Reg Hamilton. He was just like, he couldn't stand him. Just the same as Justin Holl, same thing.
But yeah. But anyway, but I mean, okay, it's not going to change, at least not in the foreseeable future. But Jan, I'm sorry, like they are proof that this format sucks.
Okay, so the next question: are you going back to the 1-16 approach?
No, 1 through 8 in each conference, 1-2 for the division winners.
Okay, I mean, we all, I think, would rather go that direction, but as you said, they've shown no affinity to going back to what we had before, right? They seem to love, they love the conference approach, right? They love, the divisional approach. That seemed to have become the end all and be all associated with it. I don't think we liked, when it first came in, it was a little new and different, but I think we all felt that it's run its course, but I don't see it changing anytime soon, Mike. We could scream from the rafters. It's not going to.
I don't either, but you know, if you're going to emphasize a division playoff format, Peter, then don't have a conference or a league-wide regular season format. You have to play every team in the league. You have to be home and away against every team in the league, and then you're playing your division, 3 times or 4 times, and teams in your conference either 2 times or 3 times. I mean, okay, then you're playing a team in your division that you're battling for 82 games that you've played 3 times. You're playing a 7-game series against them. No, if you're playing those teams, then you should be playing them back like in the Adams division or the Smythe division, playing them 6 or 8 times. But they're not going to do that because then they wouldn't be able to play. You wouldn't see Connor McDavid in Toronto or Buffalo every year. So, I mean, make up your mind. Either the divisions mean something or they mean nothing.
Well, yeah, and Mike, they could. I mean, there's a lot of things they could do. I mean, to your point, they could take a page out of MLB and have 2 separate, leagues with a one weird rule difference between the 2 and give home ice advantage with it. Like the goalie can't use a stick in one league or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like you could come up with something nuanced. Like maybe it's a 3-minute power play in the East. Like, something crazy. But the point here is it goes to the bigger picture with the NHL. They are not very good at understanding what their core fan bases want. And they have their own internal biases that are basically affirming things that they're not really understanding what the fans want or really appreciate or what they want. It's again, well, we like it this way. It makes sense to us. Therefore, it makes sense to everyone. Because the NHL Old Boys group is as strong a fraternity as there is in the world. Nothing penetrates that. And until you can shake that up and actually make a difference with make a difference in terms of the people and what the outcomes are and employing different ways of looking at the game and what fans want in the experience, it's going to stay the same. And we're going to have kooky things. It's the same reason why they can't address the most fundamental basic rule changes. Well, we like it that way.
I'm going to play devil's advocate for a sec, Pete.
Okay,
when they made this change, the NHL cited this is what the fans wanted. And fans, I have to tell you, fans were sick of playing the same teams. What was it, 12 times a year? Eight. They were sick of that. They were.
Yes.
And so we can't say that wasn't a fact, because it was. So they did make a change. Maybe
I think the regular season is different than the playoffs, though, Russ. And I'm going to Mike's point about the 1 to 8 and how they do that and keeping it interdivision. And you've got to sell the game, and you've got to have teams traveling. I think that's a really easy thing to do when it comes to stuff.
Well, you know what? They did the crossover back in the 70s. Do the crossover again, or is it the 80s?
No, it wasn't crossover. It was 1 through 16.
It was a crossover in the playoffs.
I think you've got to keep it East and West, and the best from each. And you're going to have some lopsided years, but that's just the way it goes. It's no different than baseball. It's no different than the NBA. But you've got to make sure that somehow there is meaning in winning. And right now you don't have that. And you get these weird things. Who wants to see, I don't know. I remember seeing it and what it would have looked like had you done 1 through 8 for each side. And there's some very intriguing things there. And I think we can collectively agree that most of the better games and series have come out of the East this year, but there really hasn't been a series that everyone's going to go back and go, wow, that was an incredible series. They just haven't been that interesting. Right. And that's the concern. And if that becomes a trend in this format, then the NHL really needs to take a look at it.
Well, the funny thing is, in the East, in a conference playoff format, all 4 matchups would have been the same this year. They would have exactly been the same. It would have been New York, Washington, Carolina Islanders, Florida, Tampa, Boston, Toronto. It's the West. That was different. And I'm just saying, no, we don't want to go back to 8 games, Buffalo, Toronto playing 8 times. I'm sure Buffalo and Toronto fans would love it. And people selling tickets, the entrepreneurs outside of the buildings. But nobody wants to go back to 8 times. But if you're gonna stay with a 4-team interdivision schedule, that's what they play. The 7 other teams in the division, either 3 times or 4 times, then you cannot have a playoff format that emphasizes just teams in your division. I mean, it's possible to play teams in your division even in a conference playoff format.
Okay, but here's the thing. So people have been complaining forever. So there was a crossover, Mike, in the 70s after the Sabres and Canucks came in, and that was because after 3 consecutive non-competitive Stanley Cup Finals, they decided to do that.
Right.
So again, this has been manipulated many, many times over in our lifetimes.
Yes.
Some of us not our lifetimes if Peter's too young. But I'm not sure he is.
He's grayer than me.
He might be grayer, but doesn't mean
he's younger than me, but he's grayer than me.
But you get my drift. It's like every 5-8 years there's this outcry after like 2 or 3 duds, let's say, or finals that wasn't, the Stanley Cup final that wasn't up to their, they didn't like it enough. It wasn't. But
the point here, Russ, is that general managers and fans, it's not like 100%, but it's a sizable portion that have a problem with the playoff format. And Bettman is like, oh, everything is beautiful here. No, we have the best game in the world. We have the best playoff format in the world. Everything is just peachy. No, it's not. It's not. It's not fair. The playoff format is not fair. It sucks. And, you're getting matchups like Florida Vegas last year, or the Devils and the Kings of back in the day, or
wait. So what do you want as the matchup then, Mike? So who did you want? Let's say Florida would have come out of the East. Who did you want out of the West? You wanted Dallas, right?
No, I didn't. It's not that I wanted. The
matchup suck. Who then did you want?
I wanted the most deserving team, and my point is that Edmonton in a conference playoff would have not made it out of the first round. It would have been Colorado or Vegas or Dallas.
So the only way to really address that, if you're talking about deserving teams, Mike, is to change the way the points are earned in the regular season, and no paper tigers with overtime loss points and points for a loss in a shootout. You've got to change it to the 3-point win system and accurately reward winning games
in regulation.
Until the CBA gets reviewed again, That's not going to happen. And even when that does happen,
Right.
Look, if they can't figure it out long-term IR, which should have come up at the last CBA and let it go through the ranks,
And
I don't know if they're changing the point system, and they should. Look, and I'm not arguing, Michael. You want to go 1 through 8? I'm perfectly fine with that, right?
No. I'm saying
you can't
LTIR.
fix the problem without addressing what's causing the problem.
Right.
And that's the way. That's it. It's simply a math game.
And we don't know whether we don't know whether the will is there for the Players Association. I don't think they want to change LTIR.
Here's the other thing. Okay, I know you're going to think someone hacked me and I'm an AI thing, but I'm going to defend the Oilers a little bit. They're beat up.
Yes.
Draisaitl is not right. Kane's not right. There's a few others who aren't right. Yeah, and that happens at the end of a run. That happens when you get to the finals for every team. You can't predict it. You can't control it. And you never know how it's going to impact it. Mm-hmm. That is happening right now. We are not seeing the best of the Oilers. And part of that
hockey is a game of attrition. It always has been.
It's a game of attrition. And that happens. And you can't control it. So we can talk all we want about restructuring points in the regular season. We can do this. You never know what happens along the way. Who enters the postseason? 80%. I mean, I think if you enter the postseason above 80%, you're bloody lucky. In terms of where you are. And if you can get to the finals at 80%, you're probably that's the new 100. It's like being at altitude, right? Water boils at a lower temperature. And that's the thing that I think has to be considered too. The Oilers are beat up and they have bad goaltending. Like
they have
favors, and Bobrovsky.
They have average goaltending. I know about bad. I call it average.
He's running an 824 for the series.
Yeah,
that's not just average.
His defense in front of him hasn't helped him much, Pete.
No,
Darnell Nurse has been a flat out, poop show right now.
Yeah, and Cody
and when he was bad last night.
And when you have to put Cody Ceci back in the lineup,
and in game 2, what was in game 2? Was it the Bouchard? Here, take the puck so you can go ahead and score, Evan Rodriguez. I mean, that was an absolutely brutal clear, but Bouchard also in game 2.
I'll just say this: I think I'm granting your point, Peter, that they're wounded. A lot of players are playing hurt, but the thing is that teams that have depth can survive those injuries or can mitigate those injuries.
That's the other point. That's a good.
They're not a deep team. They're not a deep team. And when injuries happen to their key players, then they're a very average team. They have average goaltending. They have 3 good defensemen, and they're a top-heavy 2-line offensive team with a bad bottom 6. They should have never got here, but they did. So you can't take that away from them in the current format. But the problem is that we're watching this and we're seeing a one-sided match, and that I think is because of the format. And let me just go to one more thing here, and then we can move off of the final. And Jan, we commented on this at the same time, and Russ as well. And Peter, you probably didn't hear it because you were watching it on CBC. Okay.
Yeah. I actually turned it to the ABC feed. Is it?
Yeah,
ABC.
Ferraro?
Yeah.
Ferraro and Sean McDonough. And I'm sorry, I mentioned this before, and I'm not trying to zero in on him, but I was among a legion of viewers who were watching that game last night. I was driving home, watching it on my phone, and listening because I'm watching the road. And Sam Reinhart scores a goal with about a minute left to go in the first period. And the call by Sean McDonough on that goal was like it was a Wednesday game on ESPN3 in Ottawa. It was so uninspired, unexciting. I mean, could you get, you go over the top for Evan Rodriguez, he's but in this goal, late in the first period, the first goal of the game, I mean, it was
one of the worst calls we ever heard.
Oh my God! I mean, Jan, it was horrific. It was horrifically bad.
He's been brutal this entire playoffs.
Yes,
it is why. Look, first of all, Ranger fans think that Ray Ferraro has an in for them, anyways, right? So I'm discounting that to begin with. McDonough hasn't been particularly good. It's why everybody has been clamoring for them to get Bob Wischusen and let Wischusen do it, because at least he brings a little oomph. And look, sometimes he goes too much over the top. And again, those of us, Russ and I, being in New York, are used to hearing him do ESPN, doing Jets games on football, doing other ESPN games. So we're used to his style. He has a tendency to go over the top, but at least he provides a little bit of oomph. Somebody yesterday did a side-by-side, I don't know if you guys saw it, of
Cuthbert,
Sean McDonough's call compared to Mike Emmerich's call. And the disparity between the two of them obviously is staggering. I mean, McDonough has done himself no favors this playoffs at all to be the number one guy. And then you compare what we had years ago with Emmerich compared to McDonough, and it's like night and day right now.
Hell, you've got a better play-by-play guy doing in-between period stuff with Steve Levy than you do the guy doing the game. Now, go ahead, Peter.
I'll take Doc Emmerich on his front porch if he still wants to.
Me too.
That way.
Go ahead.
Give me Gary Thorne.
Funny. I found it kind of refreshing to switch because I was getting really tired of listening. I don't have a problem with Cuthbert's call. I don't. He was fine. I was getting tired of Craig Simpson. Man, was he getting hard to listen to? And it was just like, so I said, you know what, tonight I'm going to watch the ABC feed. I actually really enjoyed Ferraro.
Ferraro's great.
Really enjoyed him. And maybe the call wasn't as big and exuberant as it could be at times, but sometimes that's okay too. And there's other things to pay attention to, and the announcer shouldn't take the stage of it.
I think that's
but I know that they should set the stage. I see your point.
What you're saying, Pete, I understand. But with McDonough, it seems like these goals are taking him by surprise.
Yes. Yeah. I think that was it more than anything. But the only thing I can compare it to, and both examples are over the top. Dave Mishkin, the Tampa Bay radio guy, who when the Tampa Bay Lightning score any goal in the regular season or in the playoffs, it's like Hiroshima. It's like, oh my God, the biggest, it's the biggest thing that's ever happened. If the other team scores, it's like shot, score. It was closer to shot, score with that kind of low. And I think you're right, Russ. I think he was caught by surprise that Reinhart tipped it in, and he was caught flat-footed. But I'm sorry, you know what? Maybe you're caught flat-footed on the goal, then emphasize something else. Oh my God, 1-0. You could have saved it. He didn't save it. He's bad at this. And like with Schuzen or Levy or even Buchagras.
I just don't think hockey is his sport. I really don't.
No.
I don't know why ESPN does.
I don't know. They wanted a name.
I'd prefer Buchagras. I'd actually like to see him get John Forsling back and let Forsling do it, because at least Forsling
everybody would like. Listen, we have to be realistic. They didn't want to pay Forsling the money. I'm sure that's what it is.
Well, I mean, and
the crazy thing is, in the U.S., you have a plethora of announcing talent. You got to get you really do. It's an ocean of talent compared to Canada. You just don't have people who are growing up on hockey, and someone's got whoever has the rights has to convince a person. You can literally you can become a legend like Doc if you focus on the game, because you've got the right voice and the right cadence. Now you got to learn the game of hockey. Right. And the opportunity is there for someone who wants to take it. You've got to get the right producer and the right network to come in and talk to someone, because your talent is amazing. My kids watch a ton of college sports and stuff. I'm not always in tune with it, but when you hear a certain voice, you go, there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah.
And to fight your way through college sports, or to make that break into the NFL even regionally, is such a battle, because everyone wants those things.
Yeah, and
there's a throne waiting to be sat in.
In the New York metro area, Brendan Burke is great. If they got someone like
That's
him,
what some people are saying in the chat here.
Yeah, he's terrific.
Yeah, he's very good, Burke. He's very good, Burke. I mean, look, we've talked about this before. Compare and contrast the broadcast, TNT's broadcast, and the quality of their broadcast to what ESPN has done. And ESPN, in my opinion, while they have shown interest, have not done themselves any favors in terms of how they show the game, because the camera angles are actually god awful to follow the game. The broadcasters as well have not been good. And honestly, look, I like Messier. Messier and PK are both basically going at each other, right? And that's part of the game that they played. But you compare and contrast that to what the TNT broadcast does, and it's also like night and day as a comparison, because that broadcast, you look at, first of all, the guys they have on there. Look, and I'm not obviously a Biz fan at all, because he's supposed to be the comic relief, but you have guys who know the sport
Right.
Good.
It's the only thing that I've ever liked Gretzky on is the TNT post. He's insightful. He provides good analysis. He's measured, and that balances out what Bissonnette does. But yeah, the ESPN broadcast is a clown car. Some of the angles, like you said, that one angle, it looks like it's being shot from a drone. When they're doing on the power play where it's hovering, it's probably on a tether. It was probably the camera that was left over from the NFL broadcast. That's how bad it is.
Yeah, I mean the other thing too, and look, I don't want to be all day just doing this. We should talk about Patrick Laine in a minute, but when they go in, in between, not commercials, in between periods, and they do that kind of stuff, they haven't decided how to sit Messier and PK Subban this whole time. First, they're really far apart. Now they're really close together. And Messier literally just says the same stuff. Like, we never see him break anything down. It's always like, shoot a lot of pucks, go to the net, play hard. And it's like, no, that's not going to do it. It wasn't going to do it for Edmonton. You need to say more about what Edmonton's doing wrong, what they could do right. And it has to be in more technical terms. This isn't 1970 anymore. Fans aren't accepted of
by the way, this is where Lundqvist has been great on TNT because he comes at it from a different angle, right? He's giving an insightful view. Anson Carter as well, and Gretzky also. Obviously, Gretzky from playing and from coaching also has that perspective as well.
And on CBC, I think Bieksa and Rudy and Botterill do an excellent job as well. So it's like, ESPN's lagging behind, and this is the thing. It's like, the league should have an issue with this. This is part of the presentation of your game. Somebody announcing and the way that they announce speaks to how your game is shown to the public. And if it's not done well, it affects things. So anyway, let's move off this. I know the chatter coming out of Columbus is that Patrick Laine and the Blue Jackets are headed for a divorce. Now, he was in the player assistance program at the end of the year, having some off. We don't know the specifics of the off the ice issues. I'm not going to speculate on it, but I mean that would probably affect the market for him, Russ, because you've got a player who's I think he's got a year left right now. I'm looking at his contract. He's got 2 years left, this year and next year, at $8.7 million, and he's been an up and down player. He's got a ton of talent, as Peter would know, him being from Winnipeg, playing for Winnipeg. He's got a ton of talent. He's streaky, but he could be a good deal for a team if he's right. But nobody knows if he's right or not.
Yeah, the problem with this Laine, and I'll let you go, Pete, is this Laine is a 50-point guy. We're not going to ever see that 70 or 80-point Laine. Like, that's done. His development has been so messed up, part of it on him, part of it on teams, and he's never really gotten better at shooting. He's just gone with the same shot literally year after year after year. So now, Pete, I think this is the guy we got. That's it.
So when this kind of came out, I saw a lot of speculation out of Vancouver, just, hey, would he fit? And what I said to the Vancouver people, and it's funny, is what I was saying when we were all at the draft in 2019, when all the rumors were Vancouver's going after Tyler Myers. Don't ask for what you want for. You might get it. I said, if you really think that Vancouver is a spot for Laine, and what the Vancouver crowd was sort of saying was putting him with Pettersson. Okay. Yeah. On paper, sure. It could make sense. You need to go back from 2017 to 2021 or 2018 to 2022 and watch a boatload of film on him, because something changed with the way he wanted to do things and where he was on the ice. 44 goals in 2018. He was getting set up really well by Blake Wheeler in Winnipeg. There were certain things going on. You need to go through that film, and then you need to figure out where the success was, where did he struggle, and what happened at the end. And then figure out, do you have those same ingredients where he was successful, and are you willing to make it? That's what you have to do, because you've got time now to be smart about this and not do a haste thing. Oh, because what do we know NHL GMs and fan bases do? They get caught up in brand names. Same with coaches. And you get the wrong coach for the wrong players, and you set yourself back on. Well, you make the wrong trade with the right assets for the wrong piece, you set yourself back.
But you're right. They have a month to study him. They do.
You got to study him. I agree he's a 50, 60-point guy. We're never going to see 40-goal Laine again. But if you can make him a 30-goal guy and you know what he's able to do, and you're able to manage those minutes and those starts and where he's starting, yeah, you should trade for him. But you better make sure you have not only the cap space, but the right assets on your team right now, and the ones that would be remaining if you should have to trade for players. Because I don't think do you think Columbus is going to want picks, or do you think they're going to want?
I think they want players because they have players.
They want a player for this.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
They want players.
And you know, like Dan was saying in the chat, I mean, because everybody is connecting Laine with Carolina, because Carolina is like, you know, Helsinki South. With all the Finnish players that they have, but they have to sign guys like Teravainen and other players, and they were trying to get Gensel, but apparently Gensel is going to go to market. It would make sense because they don't like long-term deals, but I don't know whether, you know, they're going to take him at 8.7, Jan. I think they probably want to get him at a discount, and I don't think Carolina wants to give players back for a player like that.
No, and you're not getting. And look, if he's a 30-goal scorer, in my opinion, given some of the other deficits that he had in his game, he's not an $8.7 million a year player either for the next 2 years. And granted, he has to unfortunately come with a little bit of a discount given what's gone on with him the last couple of seasons. I know a couple of guys on my blog are like, "Oh, trade Trouba for him." I'm like, okay, they're not trading Trouba for him. First
oh my
of all,
God, these Rangers
that leaves you with a massive. I'm like, guys, it leaves you with a hole on defense, even if you don't like him. You're adding a guy who I'm not quite sure if he fit. Look, you're looking for a good right wing. I'm not sure if he fits in that system either in terms of the type of player that he is. And look, as you said, Pete, you need to kind of figure where was his best stretch? Why did he have that best stretch? What system utilizes him? And also, how much is, if Columbus wants to get rid of him, how much are they willing to assume cap-wise to be able to make it? If they assume 25%, you probably have a decent shot of doing it if he's a $6 million a year guy as opposed to an $8.7 million a year guy for the next 2 seasons.
Yeah, with 2 years left, if I'm Utah, I'm like, yeah, I take him. I work out a deal because it'll add to their offense. They have a good power play. He certainly could do something for them, and there won't be that much pressure. Matter of fact, it could be a nice breath of fresh air because those fans will be excited to see any hockey.
Yeah, but the problem is that Utah has 20 draft picks in the first 3 rounds in the next 3 years, and hardly any players, and they're probably going to focus mostly on signing.
They could do a 3-way trade. Like, that's where you do a 3-way trade is you give another team those draft picks, you get a player and trade it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting comment from Tony in the chat of Chicago maybe trying a reclamation project.
Yeah, I mean, you could put him with Bedard, and I'm sure that would be. I mean, there is.
I don't know if Bedard's the right thing, but they're in that cycle where if they can look, Columbus is keeping cap on this. Make no bones about it.
Right, they have.
Right, they're going to retain salary.
No choice.
Yeah,
they have no choice. So if
you also have to figure out if Laine is the right person for Bedard, given where Laine is in his career, also.
Right.
In order for them for Bedard to take that next step.
You know, the Sharks.
Yeah, which by the way, I'm assuming you guys already went through the Sharks' new coach, because that shocked me when I saw him. Like, so you fired Quinn, you gone through 9,000 interviews, and then you keep the guy who is his assistant. So where did you end up in that position to begin with, and why did Quinn basically? And Quinn ended up in a good position, where obviously is Sullivan's assistant, but we discussed this when it happened. We all were like, "What are you doing here, and why?"
I think the Schroeder move was getting Ryan Warsofsky. I think that was the long-term move for them. He's a smart guy. He was a smart player who got the most out of, like, you know, he was a smaller defenseman, and he's been a good coach, a good assistant. So I think that was the smart move. But if you look at Laine, again, he would help their power play in San Jose. He could help guys like Smith and Celebrini, depending on if they're both on the power play or just he's on one of them's on power play one, one's on 2. I mean, that could be a good thing because there is some talent there, and they would need a shot. They don't have that shot yet on the power play, so I could see San Jose doing it too.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little.
Guys, before we go, we should have a quick take on the Utah jerseys also.
That was what I was going to bring it up. Okay, I would like them to keep Utah Hockey Club than a stupid nickname like the Yeti or the Mammoths. So I don't mind. I like the color too. Somebody made it. It's Hockey Night in Canada blue. That sort of light blue. So I like it. I'm thumbs up on that. What do you go? Let's go around. Jan, what do you think?
I thought it was fine. I didn't think there's nothing bold in it. No. I think Utah Hockey Club. Look, we're not a soccer club, right? It's not like the Utah FC here. I mean, use a nickname, right? I think they have to come with a nickname because I think from a marketing perspective, you need a nickname. I think the colors, they're fine. They could have been a little bit bolder. Look, I wouldn't mind them going to try to do something like the Jazz did with purple or something of that ilk, or something more akin to a bolder color. I mean, right now they're fine. They're just there, in my opinion. There's nothing extravagant or exciting or dramatic about it. I'm hoping it's an interim until they figure out exactly where they want to be, and they needed a 1-year interim, and then they're going to come up with something a bit more dramatic and a bit more that kind of fits the flavor of the organization and where they're located now.
Yeah, I thought the Washington.
I hope so.
Washington Football Club is better than the Commanders. The Commanders is a stupid.
But I mean, look, the way the H is, backwards, sort of like on the slant on it. There's some things that are nice, but it will depend on what team name they that wins the contest, and we'll find out. We're all rooting for Yeti, or a lot of us are. And if it were, then I think they would change the look of that jersey. So I think, this is like they want to be able to sell jerseys first year. We kind of made fun of
maybe the Mammoth.
Yeah, we kind of made fun of the women's league because they didn't have any trademarks or anything settled, and they had to do this. And now we have an NHL team doing it. So it's no different. And I guess some people will buy the jersey because they just want one, right. And then it may just turn into a one and done. Who knows?
Okay. All right, guys.
Hold on. I think it's a safe move because, as Jan said, if they want to change it, they've got a lot of runway. And why try to hurry up something and then not be happy with it? The colors are traditional, so you got a long runway to go. You'll have potential for alternates, and when you do settle on a name, and I think it's absolutely important that they do have a nickname and not just hockey club. I think it needs to be something. Then your marketing can take off and you can do it right, not in a hurry up offense. And that's really important because you get one chance at a first impression. They've made a safe one, but they've got a lot of options going forward.
All right. Good show, guys. We'll be back on Monday, maybe to crown a new Stanley Cup champion. We'll see. For Jan Levine, for Pete Tessier, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.